My boss forces me to crush on clients at business dinner. I teach him a lesson. Hi there, I'm Tanya, and once my boss forced me to flirt with his business partners just so he could land a big account that would make him a billionaire. I ended up teaching him a lesson. Before anything else, though, welcome to the channel. If you haven't yet, consider subscribing. And if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that notification bell icon. It'd really help us out. My boss is what some people might call a hard ass. He's tough and demanding, and there's no line he won't cross to get what he wants. I found that out when, one evening, he took me to a business dinner where a bunch of very important, very powerful men were going to be. He was trying to land their accounts, and to do so, he wanted me to do one thing for him. He took me aside, away from the table, so he could tell me his plans. You need to cozy up to them, Tanya. You have to help me out on this. You're pretty. If you smiled more, you'd be prettier. Just go in there and be all smiley and laugh at their jokes. Remember to touch their hands when you laugh, okay? Boss, I don't think I'd be comfortable doing that. I'm sorry. I was about to leave when my boss grabbed my arm and forced me to face him. With just the look in his eyes, he threatened me. Look, you're my secretary. You will do what I tell you. I knew there was an or else in that sentence that he didn't need to say. So I followed him back to the table. I did what he wanted. Every time one of the men made a really bad joke, I made sure to laugh as hard as I could. But it only turned them off when my obnoxious laugh echoed through the empty restaurant when none of them found the joke funny. A smile from ear to ear was permanently plastered on my face, and it made all the guys uneasy because it made me look a little unhinged. The night ended on a bit of a sour note when one of the guys shared a really embarrassing story, and thinking that it was meant as a joke, I laughed my heart out and slammed my palm on the table for added effect. The whole table looked at me like I was insane. I think that's enough for the night. I think your secretary's acting a little strange for our taste. We will call you if we're still interested in this deal, Carl. My boss's eye began to twitch after hearing that, but then he just smiled. I'll wait for your call. After handshakes and pleasantries, the businessman left without even so much as a look at me. I'm sorry, boss. I did say I was not very good at that, and it made me really uncomfortable. Nonsense. It doesn't matter whether or not comfortable. Success is uncomfortable. Don't blame me for your ineptitude. You simply need to be better at your job. You need to change. You need to be perfect. From then on, my boss hatched another plan. He was not about to give up, and so, in preparation for their next meeting, he made me take classes that had nothing to do with my job. He enrolled me in etiquette courses. He made me learn how to put on makeup, and then he took me shopping for clothes. When you see average girls in movies getting transformed into a beautiful swan by way of a makeover montage, it all seems so fun and enjoyable. But what my boss did to me was horrific. Yeah, he bought me stuff, but it was all very provocative, uncomfortable stuff. Stuff that I wouldn't even like wearing. He only bought the dresses that would be so tight on my figure, and he made me train to wear corsets. The shoes he bought me had heels so high, every time I took a step, my ankles would threaten to give way. On the big day of their final negotiations, my boss made me face a floor-length mirror. What I saw was someone I did not recognize. The girl in the mirror looked perfect in every sense. But she was not me. And even under all that makeup, I saw how awkward everything made me feel. My boss gave me encouragement, though. Keep your head up, and remember to smile. You can land this deal for us. I believed him. I really believed I was doing it for the good of the company, so I tried my best. As soon as I entered the room, all the men whistled at me. "Did you get a new secretary?" Good for you. That last one was a mess. Yeah, right. What a lunatic, that one. My boss laughed at that. I just turned red in embarrassment. Guys, come on. Don't embarrass her. This is Tanya, same girl. Wow. Really? That ugly girl turned into this fine lady? Dang. I see she's finally learned to smile. The whole meeting passed with them not accomplishing much. The guys just spent all afternoon staring at me, and though somehow it was a bit flattering, I still hated it. So I was relieved when one of the men asked for a coffee refill. But when I brought his mug back, the heels I wasn't used to wearing wore on my ankles, and I tripped. I poured boiling coffee all over the guy, and he immediately sprang from his seat, squealing like a pig. I couldn't help it. The image of him, his voice, it just made me crack up. I laughed and laughed until I had no breath left. The deal fell apart, and Carl fired me. But hearing what happened, some of my female coworkers recommended me to an all-female consultancy firm, which was just down the block. I got hired and started my new job in just a week. They were interested in hearing about my story, and so I told them. They were outraged. Men, right? Ugh, we have to work twice as hard, and they still don't take us seriously. Don't worry, Tanya. If you do good here, you'll be rewarded, and we'll never ask you to do anything like that, ever. Thanks, guys. I'm really happy I found this firm. And I really was. Working there was a breeze. Whenever I did something good, I was credited for it. And when I made mistakes, instead of shouting at me and blaming me, they taught me how to do it better for next time. Those ladies taught me everything about the business, and I was finally able to apply the things I learned at school instead of being a servant to someone who only took credit for my work. One day, I heard Carl's company had fallen on hard times. They approached our firm, not knowing that I was part of it. I, of course, volunteered to take on the account, even if the girls were apprehensive since they didn't have much of a budget. They said Carl told them that since it was just a girl doing the job, the price should be half what men would charge. It made me angry enough to march into Carl's office and demand that he triple his offer. I gave him a presentation so good he couldn't refuse. The funny thing was that he never recognized me. Typical. So I introduced myself with a different name. In a month, my efforts showed amazing results. Carl was happy, but it wasn't enough. His company needed more work. And so, Carl asked me if I would consider extending our contract until the company could be at 100%. I pretended to think about it. I'll help you. I'll help this company. On one condition. Anything. I'll take back what I said. You may be a girl, but if anyone can do it, you can. Anything? Anything. Hire my company on a retainer for 5 years. Done. And you have to give a recommendation to my bosses. Ask them to make me a partner. I want to be an executive. It's the least you can do. I will talk to them, I promise. In the months I spent with Carl and his company, I made so many improvements. It was hardly the same company. And Carl saw how hardworking I was. The problem was, spending all that time together made Carl develop feelings for me. It was uncomfortable at first, but, and don't judge me, I began to like him too. Even if he's usually a douchebag, sometimes he can be quite sweet. I entertained the idea of us. I even went on a couple of dates with him. Don't blame me. I'm not made of stone. The guy was hot as all hell. But my fairy tale ended abruptly. One night, I overheard a phone call he was making. He wanted to take me from my old firm. He was scheming to get me fired so I would have no choice but to go back to him, to work for him again. The real reason he kept delaying telling my bosses about the work I've been doing was that so he could keep me to himself. He never wanted me to be an executive. He wanted me to be just his secretary again, so he could claim my success as his own. Only he didn't know he'd already done that same thing to me before. It made me furious. So furious I wanted to strangle him. but I played it cool. I pretended I had no idea. So one day, I set up a very important meeting with a bunch of powerful businesswomen who could save his company. I have an idea, but you will have to clean up for one night. I'm game. What is it? I did exactly what he did to me. I dragged him to shop after shop, dressing him in tight suits. I gave him flashy shoes and the sort of haircut a teenager would get. And then, when it came time to meet the ladies, I whispered in his ear, "Don't forget to smile. You look prettier when you smile." And that was when he finally recognized me. He was so shocked that the whole evening fell in shambles. His buttons were so tight they burst and shot one of the ladies on the forehead. In his haste to apologize, he tripped and landed on one of the ladies' lap. The businesswomen were scandalized and left without a word. Carl was furious. "You! I should have known! You look so different! How dare you do this to me?" Doesn't feel good, does it? Being objectified like that. "Well, you've done it now. I'll make sure they fire you, and we're over. Don't even think I'd ever date you again, you imposter." I chuckled at that. I took the bill and paid for the whole dinner. Don't worry about paying. I know you're not doing well, and you know what? Go date yourself. I don't need no man, mister. When I told the girls at work, they didn't even blame me. We already made money off of him, and the good work I did for his company had already boosted our reputation. They just laughed at how desperate Carl was. And hey, in just 6 months, they promoted me. I'm now an executive, and I'm still slaying in Wall Street.